Christian coalition. Those are some of the results that are currently trickling in Tanzania. We now join John Allen Namu, who is in Tanzania, to tell us the latest there. Good afternoon, Namu.
Good afternoon, Najma. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you're joining us in the East African community. We are here at the Nyerere International Convention Center, just about to hear the second announcement from the National Elections Commission on the results that they've received so far, those being the official results. The first ones, of course, declared in 3 constituencies that John Magufuli from CCM had commanded a strong lead in those regions, South Unguja being one of those constituencies. The number ranging from between 4,000 votes between himself and Edward Lowassa, his challenger, and 6,000 votes. We're just waiting for a few minutes now for the members of the National Elections Commission to come in and announce a second round of results. But for the moment, news is focused around the island of Zanzibar. That happening fairly few minutes before that first announcement took place. Mohammed Saif of the CUF, who is under the Ukawa coalition, under which Edward Lowassa is running, declaring himself the president of that semi-autonomous region and asking, or rather demanding, that the NEC declare that he is president. He says that he won on that side of the country with 52% of the vote. Muhammad Ali was there at that press conference. We'll be bringing you those details right now, but just so you know, Mohammed Saif had been a key cog in Edward Lowassa's campaign. I believe we have a soundbite just to show you who exactly he was and the kind of demands that he was making prior, just one day prior to the election, with respect to the electorate that Edward Lowassa and Chadema were depending on, that is the youth. This address was here in Jangwani in Dar es Salaam. All right, we can take that now.
kwamba watampa kura nyingi sana Mheshimiwa Lowassa. Lakini pia wanasema wao washafanya maamuzi, iliyobaki kesho ni kuthibitisha tu kama Maalim Seif ndio rais wao.
All right, that is Mohammed Saif from CU, who is part of the Ukawa coalition. That declaration causing quite a few jitters in Zanzibar. Otherwise, here in Dar es Salaam, nothing too much to report by the way of electoral concerns. We were speaking to Thomas Letangule from the IEBC in Kenya just a few minutes ago. He, of course, distancing himself or any electoral commission from the kind of comments that Mohammed Saif had said. We'll run that interview for you shortly. But right now, minutes just counting down to the second address by the National National Elections Commission, Najma, things here seeming to move a little slower than they would in other electoral cycles, with the expectation that perhaps there would be more results coming in. Now remember, the transmission of results here is not electronic as it is in other countries, including Kenya. Therefore, the manual manner in which things are collected and tabulated and collated here tends to slow things down a bit, but constitutionally they have a number of days before they will declare the president, the new president of Tanzania. And of course that swearing in should happen by Thursday this week. All indications are that is going to happen, Najma.
If you can hear me, Namu, has there been any reactions to this initial results in Tanzania?
Well, no reactions as yet. If we're talking about Zanzibar, the reactions are restricted to that corner of the country, not yet filtering through to the National Elections Commission here. But that's something that we would like to ask them, whether they've heard of this, what their reaction is to that specific claim by Mohamed Saif Ukawa and the Ukawa coalition. With respect to the other elections that were taking place here across the country, very settled in terms of the kind of reactions that they have. Still waiting for that National Elections Commission announcement, though, Najma.
Yes, Namu, you mentioned earlier that the results are trickling in slowly. Maybe if you could just take us through how they're actually coming in, how they're going to reach Dar es Salaam, how is the whole process?
All right, what happens here is that votes, of course, are counted at the polling station, and then they are transmitted to the constituency level where they're tabulated, much like Kenyans, before they are brought now to the National Elections Center here at the Nyerere International Convention Center for announcement. They announce them in batches as and when they get them in terms of constituency. If you look back to the 2007 election, where we had 3 electoral posts in Kenya that were being announced at various stages, presidential, parliamentary and civic, that's pretty much how it's going here, although they have restricted themselves to the presidential vote at this time. Parliamentary results are not being announced. Of course, there are 8 candidates in this election outside of John Magufuli and Edward Lowassa.
Namu, we see in Kenya the results being announced in different parts of the country. In Tanzania, do they maybe announce the results at the polling stations, or do they wait for the Electoral Commission?
No, the Electoral Commission has the mandate to announce all results. Those results are not announced officially, at least, at the polling station. That will be tabulated and people have access to those results as and when they are counting them. So any tally that comes from the polling station prior to the National Elections Commission making those announcements is an unofficial result, whether the agents were there counting them or not. So no, that doesn't happen here in Tanzania. They try and centralize everything around one body. Now remember, the national election system here in Tanzania is something that they had wanted to address through constitutional amendments, to have something more akin to the Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission that we have in Kenya, that would be able to oversee and deliver results in perhaps a different manner. The use of a National Elections Commission that is felt that is fairly close in terms of dependence on the government is something that the opposition specifically has complained about, and members of the public also feel is something that could drive a wedge between voters should there be any claims that would gain steam in public of there being electoral fraud because of the role and the structure of the National Elections Commission.
Now we have seen the presidential election results trickling in. Tell me something about the parliamentary ones.
Well, the parliamentary elections seem to be going fairly well, although results from the parliamentary elections are not being announced as yet. The focus, as I mentioned, Najma, is on the 8 presidential candidates. The announcements so far have been restricted to that. So parliamentary and civic election results are going to be announced fairly later on. The focus, of course, being so that perhaps the tension that could build around closely fought election as this one has been can start to subside as people feel that they are being fed consistently with results from around the country from the presidential vote specifically. So parliamentary results not yet, although analysis has put it that Chadema may in specific areas record some major victories and some major upsets, considering that the wave of support, the wave of overwhelming support that Edward Lowassa as a presidential candidate has received in various areas, stronghold areas, for instance, in Arusha and in the north of Tanzania, where Mercy Kandia is stationed and will be bringing us an update later. Those victories may not be seen in the grand scheme of things in this election as being fairly important if CCM holds on to power, but in terms of wrestling the grip away from CCM in Parliament in Dodoma, where legislation is made, where changes are made, especially as Tanzania considers constitutional amendments, that is what analysts are pointing at as being a possible major victory for Lowassa and for the other parties that are running in this election. Najma.
Namu, if you could just tell us how long this process is going to take before we get a complete picture of who's going to be the president of Tanzania.
Well, it could take anywhere from this evening until Wednesday. That's what we're waiting for. Things, like I said, move fairly slowly. The announcement of results being delayed until this morning, and even this morning were not announced when they said they would, delaying by about an hour. That's still keeping on going. But because of the manual nature in which elections are tabulated, election results are tabulated and then announced, that tends to slow things down here. Most analysis has it that by Thursday there will be a presidential result and there will be a swearing in of a president, whether from CCM or from Chadema. We have a government spokesman fairly close in this hall. We'll try and catch up with him later on in this bulletin and interview him about some of these issues, because there seems to be a lack of clarity about how long this process could take. Najma.
Thank you very much, John Allen Namu, with his team in Tanzania to keep us up to speed with the Tanzania's elections. We will be joining John Allen Namu in the second part of our bulletin on KTN News. Now, moving away from Tanzania, there are threats of a health crisis as doctors and nurses threaten to go on strike over salary discrepancies. Now, the health workers also complain about the refusal by MPs to include their views in a proposed health bill. Now, the strike is expected to push for the establishment of a health service commission to deal with salaries, recruitment, transfers, training and other human resource functions. Now, they say that there is an urgent need for a new scheme of service, as the current one formulated in 1992 is outdated. Health workers union leaders have proposed that the bill is withdrawn and tabled after it has incorporated their input. They further want the national referral system from level 2 to level 5 hospitals to be placed under the national government. Now, 11 people who include school-going children have been injured following a stampede at the Likoni Ferry Channel in Mombasa. This comes after a scramble for one ferry which remains operational. 2 others are grounded. Now, ferry operations were paralyzed most of the morning as hundreds of passengers remained stranded for hours. They included candidates of the ongoing Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education candidates currently sitting their national examinations. Mombasa County Commissioner Nelson Mara is blaming poor management and corruption for the crisis at the Kenya Ferry Services. He has called for the immediate sacking of the Managing Director Musa Hassan Musa.
Shida si kwamba hakuna ferry. I want to confirm that to you. Ferry zipo, lakini there is a very big problem, na nimesema hii shida hii ni mara 20. There is a very big problem at the ferry management. The MD must go if you want sanity at the ferry. Simple. I have to repeat myself a million times. Mukitaka amani ferry, mukitaka efficiency ferry, the MD must go. Simple. He is the main cause. There are 4 ferries. There are 4 ferries na kuna stampede. Shida ni nini? Ameshindwa hapa. Mkenya ambaye anafahamu kazi aajiriwe amanage ferry kwa sababu inaumiza wa Kenya. MD amewekwa kwa mfuko na cartels. He has been pocketed by cartels. Ferries wanajifanya ferries zimevunjika, zinapelekwa dry docks, na nataka kuuliza anti-corruption waingilie ferry. Leta anti-corruption waingilie ferry. Wachunguze ni nini inaendelea huko. Pesa zinaporwa za wananchi. Halafu mnadanganywa ferry zimevunjika. You cannot keep Kenyans kwa queue all the way mpaka karibu Kombani. I've told him I don't want kuona wa Kenya wakisafa hapa. I'm going to eject him from that office. Let me tell you guys, he should leave.
Management ikiwa ndio imesumbuka, mbona parastato zingine hazina shida hapa kwetu Mombasa? Lakini management ya ferry lazima ichunguze. Tu mkituambia sijui kuna dongo kundu itaisha mwaka gani na ishauziwa Mchina.
Kuna majeruhi ama kuna watu ambao wameumia, watu 11, 3 wakiwa kina mama ambao katika walioumia, mmoja wao katika vidole vyake 2 vya mguu viliweza kukatika.
Tumekaa sana ngambo ile, kisa na maana ni sana serikali tuangalilie hali ya feri. Sasa hizi tushavuka hivi, tumeacha watoto. Je, na mwenye hana mtoto amevuka, ameacha mtoto nyumbani.
Time now for a short break, but don't go too far. I will be back with more news. Still to come, the lost Indian girl heading home from Pakistan. Welcome back to KTN Newsdesk. Now let's take a recap. Our top story: results have started trickling in following yesterday's presidential elections in Tanzania. Now the first 3 constituencies have given John Magufuli convincing initial victory against Edward Lowassa. The results from the province of Mtwara gave Magufuli more than 70% of the vote, with Lowassa coming a distant second with 26% of the vote. Now in the province of South Unguja, Magufuli had 75% of the vote, with Lowassa managing 23%. The final constituency announced so far is Makunduchi, also in South Unguja, where again Magufuli won, this time with 81% of the vote. Lowassa had 17. Now you are seeing live shots of the tallying center in Tanzania on your screen. We will be going live for the next announcement. Live in Tanzania at the tallying center, getting ready for the next announcement. Well, that's it on News Desk on KTN Home, but join me on the other side, KTN News, for more news updates.